So, William Shakespeare is one of the most famous poets, and he's also one of the most famous story maker. And we all know that the Romeo and Juliet is one of his famous works that is known by the whole world. So, what is poetry? So, poetry in literature in meter form. So, it is a form of written word that has patterns, rhythm, and rhyme. So, poetry is a type of literature based on the interplay of words and rhythm. So, the words are strung together to form sounds, images, and ideas that might be too complex or abstract to describe directly. And also, poetry was once written according to fairly strict rules of meter and rhyme, and each culture had its own rules. So, these poems, however, still a rhythmic quality and seek to create beauty through their words. So, and the last one is a type of literature or artistic writing that attempts to stir a reader's imaginations or emotions. So, we all know that poetry is one of the most oldest literature in English. So, what is the importance of poetry? So, this style of writing may have developed to help people memorize long chains of information in the days before writing. So, rhythm and rhyme can make the text more memorable and thus easier to preserve for cultures that do not have a written language. So, this is also the highest form of literature, influences us because it shows the shades of human being, the different shades of human beings. So, in poetry, it expresses us our different feelings such as friendship, love, death, and other human emotions. And also, it is one of the most ancient arts and also the product of human imagination. So, one of the importance of poetry is that this has a positive impact on the social and emotional learning, especially of the children. It may offer them a way of thinking about something. So it makes them more creative. And also, it helps us to understand the world around us. So, next is imagery of poetry. So, this is the use of figurative language to evoke a sensory experience to the reader. So, when a poet uses descriptive language, well, they play to the reader's senses, providing them with sights, tastes, smells, sounds, internal and external feelings, and even internal emotion. So these are the types of poetic forms. First is blank verse. So this is a written with a precise meter, almost always iambic pentameter that does not rhyme. So for here, this is a poetry that don't have any they call that are rhyming words at the end. Next is the rhymed poetry. So this is in contrast with the blank verse, since our rhymed poems had rhyming words at the end, although some of their scheme varies, or what we call some of the lines are varied. Okay, so the next is free verse. So it is a poetry that lacks of consistent rhyme scheme, metrical pattern, or musical form. So free verse, we can actually make free verse. So for example, um, it could be an impromptu poetry. That's a also free verse, since in impromptu, some of us cannot make some rhyming words. So this is just free. You can do whatever your poetry has. So it can also be a mixed poetry about love, death, and any emotion that you feel. Next is epic. So An epic is a lengthy is a poem and narrative work of poetry. So one of the most famous example for epic is the Beowulf. So these epics are one of the most most used form of poetry. So this is a story, a poem also from the past, or characters from the past. Next is narrative poetry. So a form of poetry that tells a story and making the voices of a narrator and characters as well. So this consists of plot, setting, denouement, and etc. And that is similarly like a short story but in a poem word or poem form. Next is haiku. So this is from Japan, originally from Japan. So the first line has 5 syllables, the second line has 7 syllables, and the third line again has 5 syllables. So it's like 3, 5, and then 3 for the form of it. Next is sonnet. So a sonnet is a 14-line poem, typically not concerning the topic of love. So famous sonnet is by William Shakespeare, which is the Sonnet 18. So that is one of the most poet, and it is about love. Next is elegies. So this is a poem that reflects upon death or loss. So an elegy, I know that we all had experience of someone who passed away. So elegies are given, or this is a speech, especially the last day of the funeral wake of our loved ones, or even friends or colleagues. So yeah, this is a speech and a poem. Next is pastoral poetry. So this is a type of poetry that is that concerns the natural world, rural life, and landscape. So a poetry about nature, rural life, and landscape. So a poetry about nature and real life. So for example, you go on traveling with a round of nature, lots of nature, and you're inspired to write a poem about it. So that is now a pastoral poetry. Next is ode. So this is a tribute to its subject, although the subject need not to be dead or even sentient. So more like a poem that is a dedication to someone you love, you hate, you like, anything, but dead or not. Next is limerick. So it is a 5-line poem that consists of a single stanza and AABBA rhyme scheme, and whose subject is a short, pithy tale or description. So limerick is a form of short, humorous verse that is often nonsensical and frequently ribald. So this like a comedy. If you're a comedian, you can use limerick, since limerick poems is a short poem that composed of a humorous or nonsense poem about. Next is lyric poetry. So it is a poetry that refers to the broad category of poetry that concerns feelings and emotions. So if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling happy, you can actually turn that into poetry. So yes, you can do that. Next is ballad. So it is a form of narrative verse that can be either poetic or musical. So we also have ballad songs, right? And yeah, and it can be poetic or musical. So it's your choice if you want to make a ballad. Next is soliloquy. So it is a monologue in which a character speaks to himself or herself, expressing inner thoughts that an audience might not otherwise know. For example, some characters of the Disney characters had their own monologues, especially when someone or an antagonist will bully them. And also, if you remember, there's a monologue at the story of the Beauty and the Beast, where Belle sing, where Belle sing about hating Gaston. If you still remember that. Next is villanelle. So this is the last type of poetry. So this is a 19-line poem consisting of 5 tercets and a quatrain with a highly specified internal rhyme scheme. So this is a French verse form with the first and the third lines of the first stanza repeating alternately in the following stanza. So, thank you so much for hearing me and for listening my report. You have a good day, everyone. Goodbye. Thank you.